All right, so we're going to break down some hearings today for you guys. This will be a good show because it is going to compile 3 different hearings into one jam-packed knowledge and alpha dump for you guys. You guys are going to love it. My name is Paul Barron. Welcome back into TechPath. Before we get started, and I'll break down all these hearings for you, good stuff too, with both Jerome Powell, we've got Maxine Water. I mean, it's a good hit parade. But I do want to thank our sponsor, and that is iTrust Capital. If you're looking at long-term holding of your Bitcoin assets, your Ethereum, you can put it into an IRA, or you can actually start your IRA right there within iTrust Capital. And if you say, okay, well, I don't know if I want to go crypto, I can go with gold and even silver. So there's a lot of options for you, both getting into your 401k. You can also roll this over, as well as your TSP or even your 403b. There's a variety of different assets out there in the IRA sector that, of course, you can use within iTrust Capital. All you have to do is click our link down below, and you get a $100 funding reward. It's very simple if you decide to fund your account and get started with your own deals. So just click that link. It does help the channel out. All right, so we're going to get started here on essentially the hearing where the SEC is getting grilled by Congress. But additionally, this also will have the hearing where we've got Jerome Powell addressing Congress, both on a variety of issues around the Fed, but also into crypto itself. And then we'll wrap it up with an additional hearing for you guys. All of this is taking place this week, and I think it's a good place to start. Let's get into clip 1, because this is about stablecoins from Jerome Powell. Let's go there.
My Republican colleagues propose a stablecoin bill that would create 58 different licenses with federal regulatory approval over only 2 of the licenses. The remaining 56 licenses can be issued by each state, territory, and DC, with little or no federal oversight, regulation, and enforcement. DC-based coins, for example, would be sold to individuals nationwide, and New York or North Carolina regulators could do nothing to protect their own residents, while even the Fed would be severely hamstrung in providing any oversight. I've argued that we should allow states to be part of this process, but we must have a strong, enforceable federal floor with a role for the Federal Reserve to approve and provide oversight of payment stablecoins issued by non-banks in order to ensure that consumers are protected. Do you agree that it is important for the Fed, as our central bank, to have a chance to approve or decline any state licensed non-bank entity before it starts issuing payment stablecoins nationwide?
First of all, let me say we appreciate that we've been able to offer our views on these things to your staff and also the majority staff, and we appreciate the consideration that's given to our views. We do see payment stablecoins as a form of money, and in all advanced economies, the ultimate source of credibility in money is the central bank, and we believe that it would be appropriate to have quite a robust federal role in what happens in stablecoins going forward, and that leaving us with a weak role and allowing a lot of private money creation at the state level would be a mistake. But nonetheless, again, I do appreciate that we've been able to be heard and share our views with the committee.
Well, thank you so very much. I am appreciative for that clear answer.
All right, so a couple things there within that clip. You know, remember, the United States is a republic, and each of these states have the capability of issuing their own banking license, the whole process of the governors. When you look at the Fed, how this all works, it works in unison with the states. Now, granted, something that Powell said is very telling here, and that is that he thinks stablecoins are money. And once that you say that, especially as the Fed, you've now put this in the same qualification level as the dollar, the US dollar, and that is controlled by the Fed. So the likelihood of this is that Waters is probably going to get her way on getting this bill reconstructed a little bit around stablecoins to where it is a federal issue. The only scenario that I get concerned about with that is because of the potential here where it starts to fly into the face of CBDCs. And could that become something that would really kind of change the game? So this is going to be a kind of a concert, I think, that is going to go back and forth between the Dems and the GOP on how this all gets done. There's more stuff from the same sector and the same hearing that I wanted to break down. This is clip 2, and listen to Sherman. You guys have heard him before, but listen in.
Someone has talked about the de-dollarization. We need to compete against the euro and against the won. But one place where Congress can act is with regard to crypto. The crypto billionaires have told us they want to displace the dollar. They're working for de-dollarization. And when billionaires tell you they are trying to hurt your country, you should believe them.
Crypto and digital assets in the U.S. has got a market cap of around $1.1 trillion right now. It's been there for a bit. Do you acknowledge that this asset class has staying power in the U.S. economy?
It appears to have some staying power. Of course, that 1.1 trillion was, what was that a year ago? A lot higher.
Yeah, it's had some volatility in large measure due to the lack of legal clarity, and so hopefully this committee will help that quite a lot here this summer with at least 2 bills, one on stablecoins and one on market structure, and it'll be clear not just for Congress but for regulators, including Chairman Gensler, and obviously market participants, whether they're forming the ideas or investing in the ideas or participating in the activities in the space.
All right, so I think a lot of people might have overblown Chair Powell there, stating that it has some staying power, because he referenced the capacity that the market was at around 2 trillion, and it completely dumped into where we are now at around 1.1 trillion. So the fact that Davidson is still on the defense of where crypto is going, he clearly has an agenda on trying to get this sector at least regulated in some format. The Fed is still, I don't necessarily think the Fed is our friend. This is still one that we have to watch out for in the sense of where this is going. This summer, and I think Davidson hit it, this summer is very important to what's going to be happening on Capitol Hill on how the future of crypto in the United States is going to land. Let's go to clip 3. This is going into CBDCs.
I digress on this, but I do want to know specifically, for my constituents back home, the thoughts of creating a central bank digital currency that tracks individuals. If the Fed were to offer a direct individual account to citizens, wouldn't this be a direct threat to the financial privacy of many Americans?
Potentially, and that's why we would not, it's not something we support. We would not support, accounts at the Federal Reserve by individuals. That would not be. If we were to, and we're a long way from this, if we were to, support at some point in the future a CBDC, it would be one that were intermediated through the banking system and not directly at the Fed, for exactly the reason you point out.
I'm very happy to hear that. I think that's a good partnership with the individuals there and a respect for Americans across the board.
That statement right there by the Fed either is going to come back to haunt them, or there is something completely different afoot worldwide. Because if you think about the Fed and what's happening in Europe and around the world, including China with the digital yuan, is the fact that central bank digital currency is what I think a lot of people have assumed is going to be the next step. Now, whether you look at FedNow, and many people look at that, and it's more of a payment, almost like a SWIFT type system. But the potential of Chair Powell making that statement very clear and very concise that they don't believe individual accounts at the Fed is the way, because this has been the argument that I think a lot of people have made, is that control of the money, especially in a digital format, gets into the personal privacy scenario of an American. So it's good to hear that, but at the same time, I am very, very shocked that this was said by the chair of the Federal Reserve. So interesting statement. We'll see if this doesn't come back to haunt them, because I have a feeling they're still going to be pushing for this area. All right, so I want to jump over to this, and this is the hearing on oversight of the SEC. And there's a lot to this because it gets into the scenario of how the SEC, and if the SEC is going to release information that Congress has been trying to get to. This is a good clip here, and we kind of tried to combine this down into something that gets very narrow into helping you guys understand exactly what's going on. Listen in.
And as Chief Legal Officer, it is your job to make sure the SEC complies with our requests. Given your extensive experience sitting on this side of the dais, I know, frankly, or suspect that you would never have allowed an agency to stonewall Congress or you or your bosses the way that it appears it's been done for the last 6 months. Under Chair Gensler, the SEC's unresponsiveness to committee's requests has been extremely slow and limited in comparison to that of previous chairs. Chair Gensler, and by extension you, have continued to miss deadlines, offer no accommodations, blame staff shortages, budget deficiencies, and bureaucratic obstacles. 80% of all of the documents that you produced to date are all publicly available. But wait, it gets worse. In response to the committee's request to better understand the charges against former FTX CEO Sam Bankman-Fried, 100% of the documents that you provided are publicly available. To imply that they cannot respond to Congress in a timely manner is an insult to our institution and frankly embarrassing for yours. It should be noted that during the failure of multiple banks which they oversee and while working to manage the fallout, the Federal Reserve, the FDIC, and other regulators have been perfectly capable of providing important documents, testimony, and access to documents. The SEC is an outlier. Under Chair Gensler, the SEC has completely ignored its mission to promote capital formation, instead opting to create confusion that will ultimately hurt innovation and entrepreneurs who seek access to our markets. This isn't a unique request that have come from myself or Chairman McHenry. These issues have persisted on both sides of the aisle. Ms. Barbero, this hearing could have and should have been avoided. But what other choice do we have when the SEC, your boss, and you, by extension, continue to be uncooperative and unresponsive?
All right, so they're referencing Megan Barbero, who is the general counsel of the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission. And this is, as I said, the person that pretty much puts up the stone wall, packs it in with a bunch of attorneys, starts to throw out, legal, gibberish, much like you do in discovery, where you want to kind of confuse the other side. A lot of these things are done this way, but the SEC is essentially doing this at full tilt to Congress. And I think now we're starting to get some pushback. Congress is finally getting into a state now where they realize what's going on. And this is going to be interesting. Let's jump to the next clip.
A better title for this hearing would be Republican Micromanagement of the SEC Run Amok. From the global financial crisis of 2008 to the recent collapses of cryptocurrency firms because of criminal activity or negligence, we have seen time and time again that our constituents are well served by an active SEC. Micromanagement run amok by House Republicans is putting at risk the SEC's ability to regulate the likes of FTX and other bad actors who destroy investors' dreams with ignoble schemes.
And just for clarification, the Securities and Exchange Commission chair was here in April 18. His last appearance prior to that was October of 2021. It took 17 to 18 months for him to appear in front of this committee. We have been trying to get him to appear more often, and if you can help get him here, I would love that help.
I would like to answer your question and ask for equal time. I will help you. I have no problems working with you. You and I met and agreed that we would work together. I'd like to see us do this. So let's work together, and let's not try to micromanage an agency that is designed to be the cop on the beat.
All right. I'd suggest maybe we send a joint letter requesting his appearance. So with
if
that,
I may respond, you have addressed me. I will respond. Why not send a joint letter that we can agree upon, not a joint letter that is a take it or leave it?
So you can see the problem here that we're dealing with right now around the SEC. There is clear alignment within DC that are for what's happening under the SEC, which is under the guise of maybe the support of Senator Warren, along with the banking system. We could get into a lot of things that really start to play into this, but it's a little bit comical to watch these kind of things happening in our great country, happening today. Let's go into clip 6. This is talking about stalling.
We know you have great stellar reputation for being a very, very good lawyer, a tough lawyer. But some might suspect that the SEC is using your congressional oversight experience as a weapon to block us at every turn, frankly. And I sincerely hope that that is not true. Do you think it's responsive or productive use of anyone's time to print public complaints and your own enforcement manual and treat it as if it's responsive to our request?
So,
Is that a good use of your very qualified, highly paid staff? Because it's not of mine.
Many of the committee's requests, including the FTX requests, are broad and encompass not just
Okay,
internal
so that
documents.
you're stalling now. So you are aware that 80% of it is publicly available?
As our rulemakings are conducted in the public view, they are very transparent. The documents produced are responsive to the requests, and we are working on
All
reviewing
right,
the
I'm going to
committee's
take that as a
internal
yes. and
priorities.
My time has, I'm going to try to be respectful of everybody's time. That was a stalled out yes. So.
All right, so as you can see, a lot of what she's doing here is stalling. And I think the interesting aspect is, again, that Congress is aware of this now. They get the joke, and it's going to be interesting how this plays out. Let's go to clip 7. This is talking about SBF and Gensler.
The chairman evidently met with major Democratic donor Sam Bankman-Fried. Where was that meeting held?
I don't have any of the details relating to that meeting, but I'd be happy to get back to you with any information if there's specific questions that you have.
Matter of fact, I do have some. That I believe that the SEC has weaponized their discretion that they use against the formation of capital. My father served as director of the FBI, and when he first came to the FBI by and large had a operational way of doing business where they would investigate and go around people, and then at some point indict them. And it was very difficult for people who were under investigation to engage the Bureau for months and months and months and months. My father, as a result of his service as U.S. Attorney to the Western District of Texas, attempted to and did change that policy. And that policy is one that I would like you, as General Counsel, I've already tried to come to Chairman Gensler, and it fell on deaf ears. And instead what happens is the SEC comes and weaponizes themselves to come in and give no feedback, no information, just ask for information without regard for any filing, in millions of dollars of perhaps assets that they have up, and they use their discretion and they hide behind someone. And I want you to know that I find it unprofessional and disingenuous that this administration would have a chairman of the SEC meet with a man, perhaps we're going to find out where he met with him, only to find out that personal access, and yet someone who has millions of dollars and who is being handled by that agency for a long period of time, for the chairman to tell me upon investigation, Congressman, we're not going to say anything. We have an average of 214 days before we generally engage someone, before we say something. That's just an average.
All right, so Mr. Sessions right there getting at it. And I think that he pretty much called him out on the math there. This is interesting because you have scenarios happening with the SEC. I guess the question I'm going to have is how long will Congress put up with this? It's clear that Sessions is pretty much at his I think the end of his rope on what they're going to allow. The only scenario is that from a legal standpoint, Megyn kind of has it in her court. She could continue to play this role because they haven't necessarily got a map to be able to actually control what's happening at the SEC. And we'll get into some of that here. I want to jump to this next clip. This is more stalling. Clip 8.
How big is your staff?
I have about 150.
150. Yes or no? Do you have final approval of the SEC's responses to letters from members of Congress?
I would have final.
Yes or no?
I wish I could answer yes or no, but it depends.
Who has the final approval?
If the chair is sending a response, it would be Chair Gensler who would have approval. If his staff is sending responses or another officer is sending a response.
Thank you, Ms. Barbaro. Many of the letters my colleagues and I have sent to the SEC include very specific questions, but receive very generic responses. How is that determination made and by whom?
A lot of thought goes into how to respond to those. My staff will consult with subject matter experts across the agency.
They're very generic responses. I mean, one to Mr. Huizenga was one paragraph long. Ms. Barbaro, what is a reasonable time frame for your office to respond to correct congressional correspondence?
The reasonable time frame is to engage, and if you are
Days, months.
So I know that this answer may not give you comfort, but it does depend on what the congressional inquiry
let me
is
move on.
and what the.
The letter from the chairman of the full committee included 6 questions, none of which were answered.
What we are aiming to do in getting back to the committee is ensuring that we can provide accurate information, that we've consulted with the appropriate experts.
You didn't answer the
in
questions.
commission.
You didn't accurate information. As I said, generic responses. You don't answer the questions. One paragraph. You're telling me you're doing this in-depth study and this work, and you've got 150 lawyers, and this is the kind of response we receive. It is wholly, wholly inadequate.
All right, so I think they are kind of fed up with it. The cat is out of the bag. What Gensler has been up to on the SEC, where this is going and where it's coming from. It's also setting up a lot of things around maybe the framework of how the SEC is responding to Congress in a timely manner, questions to answers they think should be easy and just they need answers. But the bigger scenario playing in here is the amount of staff that Megan has to be able to essentially just completely delay, and put Congress on their heels in terms of ways that this is going to happen. Now, the question will be, does Congress do anything about it? Do they get some oversight on the SEC, maybe file and start investigations? That, I think, is going to be the outcome of this, because I think it looks, based on this hearing, that they have pretty much had it. A couple of things here. I want to get over to the last hearing. This is the hearing entitled Oversight of the SEC's Division in Trading and Markets. And this was the one that maybe would give us a little bit of an outline. It didn't necessarily land in on what's happening within this hearing, because these 2 individuals didn't necessarily really deliver much, in terms of quality of being able to get the answers that they were looking for in the meeting itself. But we do have one last clip that I want to get into to showcase here, and this is Sherman about this very issue.
Madam Chair, again, to the objections, this is ridiculous. This is absolutely ridiculous. And whether we have to do
Gentleman's time has
investigations and
Gentleman's time has expired.
closed questioning, we have got to get to the bottom of these
Gentleman's
answers.
time has expired.
The securities exchanges with the biggest problem are the crypto exchanges, which the SEC has correctly determined are indeed securities exchanges. The SEC was a little slow. FTX cost billions of dollars to investors around the world. Finally, we're going after the crypto exchanges. I want to praise you and your colleagues at the SEC for your hard work and your dedication to solving many problems. And I especially want to commend you for going after the crypto exchanges.
All right, so there it is. I mean, you've got, and we all kind of know Sherman himself is anti-crypto, and I think there's some reasons behind that. It'll come out eventually how these pawns are being played there in DC. I think this has set the table for how things are going to go forward with the SEC. Other aspects now that are all playing part of this concert are, of course, the BlackRock ETF filing, along with many other ETFs that are in line waiting. But even more so is the number of banks that we talked about here on the show over the past, about the past 10 days, the number of banks and financial institutions that have started to move in this direction and essentially are going to be falling under the very same thing that Sherman just mentioned right here, is exchanges. And I think this is the other factor that's falling into what we're facing right now, especially if you think about what's happened with Coinbase and even Binance to a certain extent. But this, I think, is going to get into a very heated scenario over the summer as we start to get into more regulatory outlines. Remember, the SEC is still in control of this unless we get clarity from Congress. And now, if that occurs, maybe the CFTC gets a little bit of control or some of that gray area. We did a video, if you guys didn't catch that, with the former chair of the CFTC about this very topic. So there is a lot happening in DC right now, and there's a lot of very interesting things starting to come into crypto. I think it's still positive, and I'm looking at it that this is a very bullish sign for the future. The real question, though, is timing. That's the biggest scenario that's going to be playing forth. And obviously, this goes into next year, which is an election year. So lots happening out there for sure, guys. If you are not part of the Diamond Circle, make sure and get in right now. It is the one place where you get additional podcasts, additional content, more analysis from our team, and it's free. So all you have to do is click the link down below for that. It's very simple to join. If you guys want to catch me, it is out there on Twitter @Paul Barron. We'll catch you next time right here on TechBath.